Do you think you can hear compression? Do you want to get better at hearing compression when it shows up in a mix? In this video, you'll be given 10 questions featuring a variety of compressible instruments, and you'll have to answer things like, which sample has been compressed? Does this sample use compression? And which sample uses the most compression? Your objective is to determine by ear if a track has been compressed. Up next, I'm going to provide a basic tutorial about what to listen for. So if you'd like, you can stick around for that. But if you're feeling confident, you can skip to the time mark to go straight to the test. All right, let's talk about what to listen for. This test is going to be focused around instruments that often use compression. So when listening to these examples, look for dynamic inconsistencies between notes. The peaks and valleys. Does the sound jump out at times, or does it seem to fade into the background? Maybe you find yourself reaching for the volume knob because the overall sound is inconsistent. These are all signs that a sound has a great deal of dynamic range and is likely not compressed. So this is natural, and it's how many dry recordings sound. Okay, so then what does compression sound like? Well, compression's effect can vary widely depending on the amount of gain reduction that's used and your attack and release settings. If you'd like to learn more about that, you can check out my other video where I go into how attack and release can affect compression. In general, a well-compressed track will have a more uniform level. The peaks are brought down and the quieter passages are brought up, which makes every nuance more audible. Compressed tracks can often be described as squashed or sausaged, especially when you crank up the ratio and used a fast attack to get more of a limiting effect. And with quick release times, you may notice a pumping where the audio swells as the compressor recovers after heavy gain reduction. But overall, compression is going to make your tracks sound much more focused and often louder as the subtle details that were once buried now appear in the mix alongside the peaks. How about you? How do you hear compression? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And with that, let's move on to question 1. All right, you're about to hear 2 versions of the same vocal, one of which has been compressed. So question 1, which sample has been compressed?
I'm one step closer to losing everything that I have cared about, but I can't get there without a little help. I'm one step closer to losing everything that I have cared about, but I can't get there without a little help.
A is a dry vocal and B is a vocal compressed at 4:1 with an 1176. All right, question 2. Which vocal has been compressed?
I'm one step closer to losing everything that I have cared about, but I can't get there without a little help. I'm one step closer to losing everything that I have cared about, but I can't get there without a little help.
A is a vocal compressed at 8:1 with a dBx 160, and B is a dry vocal. So you'll usually hear compression on vocals. It's frequently used to reduce the gain difference between loud and soft passages. Typically, the beginning of a phrase will be louder as the singer has more air, and as they use that air throughout the phrase, the volume will naturally fade. What compression is going to do is bring down those bursts of air at the beginning to even out the vocal. Then when you make up the gain, the vocal stays forward and present throughout each phrase without becoming overwhelming. This video is brought to you by DistroKid. DistroKid is the distributor that I recommend to get your music onto online streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and many more. Their services are easy to use with their app, available for iOS and Android. You can get started today using the link in the description to get a discount off your first year's subscription with DistroKid. And look out for the separate educational link for an even larger discount available for students and teachers. All right, moving on to question 3, let's do some drums. Which drum sample has been compressed? All right, so A is a drum bus dry and B is a drum bus compressed at 8:1 with a DBX 160. Let's move on to question 4. Which drum part has been compressed? Bit more subtle this time. A is a drum bus compressed at 2:1 with the townhouse compressor, and B is the drum bus dry. So now for question 5, which drum part has the most compression? So A was the drum bus compressed at infinity to 1 with a DBX 160. B is the drum bus with the townhouse at 4:1, and C is the dry drum bus. So it's very common to hear compression on drums. It's frequently used to control the dynamics of the kit as a whole so that they sit evenly in the mix, as well as to shape the transients of individual drums to make each kick or snare backbeat a more consistent level. Compression is also great on room mics to bring out the natural ambience of your drum kit. It lets you enhance the room's character without letting the big hits overwhelm the ambience. Okay, up next, let's look at some examples with electric bass. So for question 6, which bass sound has been compressed? is a bass directly into a 1073, and B is that same bass compressed at 8:1 with a DBX 160. Now, this next one is a bit of a curveball with 3 options. Question 7, which bass has the most compression? Okay, A is a bass compressed at 2:1 with a DBX 160. B is that same bass dry. And C is a bass recorded through an LA 610 channel strip with the compressor engaged. Now, I'm not sure what the ratio is on that compressor. The manual is a little vague about that, but to me, this is the more compressed option. What do you think? Leave a comment below. Now, you'll often hear compression on bass. It's frequently used to achieve a tighter, more even low end that sits solid in the mix. By taming peaks, you prevent the bass from jumping out or getting lost under the kick drum, ensuring that every note remains clear and controlled. All right, next, let's do some guitar. So question 8, which guitar sample has been compressed? A is a dry guitar sound, and B is that same guitar compressed at 8:1 with an 1176. Next, question 9, which guitar has been compressed? So for this one, A is a guitar that's been compressed with an overdriven tube amp, whereas B is a guitar through a clean amp. So you'll sometimes hear compression on guitar. Guitar pickups and amplifiers can produce wildly different volumes between soft and hard playing. Compression smooths out those differences, ensuring that every note is heard without sudden jumps in level. Another place that compression shows up on guitars is when you crank a high gain amplifier. Its components overdrive and the tone starts to saturate, and this saturation acts like a built-in compressor. The soft picks remain gentle, but as you dig in harder, the amp gently compresses the peaks, giving your riff a thicker and more sustained character. So with the right settings, compression can make your guitars tighter and sound more professional. All right, so let's go on to our full mix example, question 10.
You're a hand grenade, a cannonball, yeah. Strong TNT. I'm afraid of all the things that you could do with me. You're a hand grenade, a cannonball, yeah. Strong TNT. I'm afraid of all the things that
So A is the dry mix and B is the mix compressed at 2:1 with the townhouse compressor. So you'll often hear compression on the mix bus. A bus compressor is used to give your mix one last squeeze before hitting your hard limiter. So usually the bus compressor will have a slower attack and a much lower ratio than the limiter to sort of nudge everything together, knowing that the final limiter is fast enough to catch anything super transient. So, how did you do? Let me know your score in the comments. I hope this video helped you out. Leave a like if it did, and consider subscribing if you want to see more videos like this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
When all we do is talk, 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 it's not my fault. I can't get enough of you. And